Good afternoon, everyone. Today is another Ageless webinar. This is one of our What is Aging series, where we discuss what aging is, why we age, how we age, and how to stop it and effectively reverse it. I'm here today with Sergio Ruiz, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Biotechnologies. Their company is doing some innovative, a lot of different innovative technologies there. And they have a very interesting perspective on what aging is and what they're going to do to bring us closer to the future where we've defeated aging and we've made it a thing of the past. So thank you, Sergio, for coming, taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you having me on for this.
Absolutely. So, we'll just jump right in. We want to get your perspective. What is aging? Why do we age? How do we age? And how are you kind of conceptualizing going to the point where we can actually reverse the process?
Okay, so 3 questions. What is aging? How do we age, and how do we battle that condition that we know as aging? So aging itself, it's a really intricate concept. We know aging from just our normal day to day. We know aging from when we were babies into our school years, into our early careers, and now as we age, we see very different visual characteristics that we call aging. So there's an important concept that I like to usually talk through when somebody asks me this, and is the difference between biological aging and chronological aging. We all have that friend that's probably way older than us, but looks way younger than us. And in that respect, while they're chronologically older, we experience them as being biologically younger than us. So when we decouple those two things, we get to a very important insight, which is we age very differently and at different times. In fact, it's very well known that certain organs in our bodies age at different rates. That's why when unfortunately somebody passes away, sometimes their organs can keep on living in somebody else's body as an organ transplant candidate. So it's a very interesting concept. It definitely affects every single one of us from a socioeconomic, geographical perspective. It doesn't really care who you are or how much money you have. You are going to age. Now, there are a lot of theories of why we age, right? Some people focus on evolutionary theories. Some people focus on, program theories, senescent and damage-based theories. There's an informatics component to it. There's a lot of people trying to understand, and not just people, really good academics and researchers who have devoted their entire lives to this problem. The reasons for devoting their lives to this are varied, but the overall perspective from, I would say, the general longevity community is people want to ameliorate the suffering and the pain that comes from aging, that inflammation that you start feeling in your joints. Also, the psychological effects that can come from feeling like you're not at your best, or your best years are behind you. Those are things that are very much prevalent, to the point where one of the at-risk populations for suicide is the older population. And it's just a very, very sad thing to see all around. From a personal perspective, the theory of aging, I think there is a total degradation as anything else in the universe. Humans tend to go towards atrophy. And I do think that at a cellular level, we start seeing this these changes and these damages that accumulate then become a tissue level great problem, becomes an organ level problem and a systems level problem, and eventually just you have this entire systems in your body deteriorating and going towards atrophy. And there are certain interventions that we can engage in, but ultimately the goal, at least from our perspective and from my secular work, is to try to figure out how to combat a process of degradation via innovation, via new findings, new tools. As humans, we're always creating new tools, and we see this across industries. So why not in the medical industry? Why not go beyond a pill or go beyond the normal known paradigm of, if you get sick, if you have a problem, historically speaking, for the last 60 years, the solution has been, let's remove something, right? Let's go into surgery and fix it, right? And most of the time that surgery can try to fix what's already there, or remove something that's wrong, like a tumor or an appendix or some kind of organ that is not working well. I would like for the entire paradigm to switch into a world in which we are adding good things, right? It become additive, we can become preventative, where we become proactive about understanding that aging is a systematic process that can actually be intervened. Now, the question is, how much can we intervene in that process? And those are things that researchers are going and looking towards solving and answering. Like I said, from an industry perspective, our goal is to try to ameliorate the pain and suffering, with the goal to eventually increase the healthy years and also increase the lifespan, the actual years of your life. So not just increase quantity, but also quality.
It's all about quality, for sure. That was well said. I like how you described kind of the issues that happen at each level. First it's cellular damage, then you see the tissue damage, organ damage, and then organ system damage, and in turn all those aggregate across the organism or the human. So that was well said. And what are your thoughts? I mean, in our traditional medical system, we see it's very reactive. It's not as preventative. Now, you do have some preventative care, that people do. Maybe they go to an annual physical. But how do you think we could change the perception so people can really realize that they should be proactive in targeting aging as the fundamental driver of degradation, of the thing that's going to effectively take them off this planet?
Changing the zeitgeist and changing the culture in the mainstream is very difficult. I mean, we're coming from an era in human understanding where going to the doctor meant bad things, right? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Those are things that ultimately meant, as a society, we don't want to go to the doctor because it means trouble, it means problems. I think the newer generations are understanding this wellness, this happiness concept, right? We're evolving as a society into one that understands that it's not just good going through the motions in life, it's also good to maximize the quality of those motions, of that understanding of life. When you talk about an economic perspective, and I gravitate towards that because I'm an economist by training. Historically, you've seen, for example, different levels of lifestyles and different baskets that are created to see how much a country it's closer towards being a first world country or industrialized country, an advanced and progressive country. And these baskets historically have included objects, material objects. How do you have a fridge? Do you have access to alcohol? Do you have access to ice? Do you have access to a burger? Different things like that. And the most access that you can have, or that a normal median family has, middle class family in your country, it shows the quality of life. But more recently, they've been adding this concept of happiness index, and you start seeing a lot of Scandinavian countries, for example, come on top because it's no longer a material issue. I think capitalism and the modern social structures are very successful at creating abundance and overproducing sometimes even. And then people are realizing that maybe that kind of abundance is it's really meaningless if you don't have true health. How can you enjoy this tasty meal that only kings used to enjoy back in the 1500s and 1600s? Like whiskey used to be a thing that only kings used to enjoy. Eyes used to be a thing that only the incredibly wealthy used to have access to. So those are things that now people are starting to realize materialism is not at the crux of happiness. It's ultimately, your society, who you surround yourself with, how much pain and suffering you're going through life. So I usually, when I talk about the concept of aging, I tell people, take a couple of hours of your life and go to a nursing home, a home for the elderly, where the elderly are being cared, and spend time with them and realize we're going to be there at some point. And some have made the observation that it's in essence, aging is kind of like death row, right? People at some point are just waiting for their life to pass because everybody else is around them is passing. So it's a very grim way of looking at what lies ahead, but it's definitely a great motivator to know, hey, my grandma went through this, my great grandmother went through this. Why not try to make it better for my parents? And in consequence, make it better for myself and then my offspring as well. If we can create a morbidity reduction, right? A shortened morbidity, then we are in essence saying that we can create the number of years that you're in pain and suffering right before you decay and pass. You're trying to shorten that kind of pain and suffering, those years that are really the worst. And that's what, from my perspective, longevity ultimately is. It's the combination of health span and lifespan put together so that we can maximize how much we enjoy life. And that, ultimately answers all the socio-economic and ethical problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good example in the one in the nursing home, especially. I mean, you go in there and we all understand, like, they're not on the beach, they're not having a great time, they're not enjoying on the level that they really want to be, because really they would love to be back on the beach and not in isolation, and sort of just staring into what's about to come for them. And so I think you hit on a key point too. It's about minimizing suffering. And I mean, with the entire movement, I mean, if we could shrink that period of many years, which we see as of today, people are decaying for many years, unfortunately, and they are suffering, and then they pass. And minimizing that and maximizing the healthy years. So we are definitely on board with that. And our core thing is like taking it a step further. And I think, I know you already know, but we want to actually take someone who's much older and revert them all the way back, bring them back to their youth, the fountain of youth.
And Jason, just to answer succinctly your question, how do we change it? How do we make it so that people understand that we make it available, right? How do we change as a society's behavior so that, if you need something, you just go online and do a one-click button, buy now, and you get it within an hour. Those things exist. Changing society's behavior exists, but you have to have a product. You have to have something that gives people permission to believe that this is actually doable. So absolutely, the entrepreneurs in longevity have to get to a point where they can offer a product that is just beyond what people can get today. The next generation of therapeutics that account for aging as a root cause, I think are really going to open up the world of possibilities. And that's how I think we can change the current paradigm. We just need to make it available via a product that people can consume.
I 100% agree. And I think once we start to see a lot of these products come online, or they come into existence and they're easily accessible, I think that's going to be very pivotal, because suddenly people are going to visually see and feel how they feel. They're feeling better, they're looking younger, and I think that's going to even accelerate this entire movement even further. And so tell me a little bit. I know within Turn Biotechnologies, you guys are trying to deploy some kind of product to do kind of what you're describing, right? Like get that out there in the market, get people buying it, and get them excited and living well. So tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing there.
Sure. I mean, as a company, we're very fortunate to have a group of several individuals. We're about 40 people, who understand that every day 110,000 people die of old age, right? That's a cause of death. Making a product with next gen tools and science is extremely hard. I know that there's been a lot of really well-known folks that have tried with companies that have not succeeded. Unfortunately, innovating in any field, especially in this field where the science is the rate limiter, right? Things can look good across an entire spectrum. The whole minimal viable product concept doesn't really always apply with biotech, because it could work at a very small scale, and then you put it in a human or in a larger scale, and it doesn't really work. So it's hard to do, but in order to do something hard, you need people who are mission driven, who can with every potential study failure, you frame it in a different way. It's like, we didn't fail, we learned something new. Now we learned something that didn't work. Or if you're expecting something to be 100% but it only got to 90%, there's always, our really good scientists are always disappointed. But when you frame it to level of, we were at 50%, now we are at 90%, okay, let's focus on that last 10%. So it's a very psychologically demanding field. And if someone hasn't gone through these motions in a biotech, it's really hard to know and understand. It's always a roller coaster. So imagine a sine wave, and your goal is to try to minimize it and to make the ups and downs as leveled off as possible. But the ultimate goal is, why are we doing this? We want a product. Can we spend 10 more years or 5 more years researching this aspect of science because we have the tools and the people to do it? Yes. But at the end of the day, we put those thoughts aside, those academic thoughts aside, which are nice and fine. Then we take that into the next level. Okay, how do we keep manufacturing something that is going to help people? And of course, there's an outlet for discovery. We do have our R&D department headed by Dr. Vittorio Sebastiano, Stanford professor, associate professor. So, there's always an outlet for discovery, but the mindset is always, let's try to get a product out.
Right. Yeah. That commercialization aspect is key. And what I think of too, it's a lot of the time to develop a new technology, some people might think that you actually have to understand all the different mechanisms of action and the granular details. But in reality, sometimes experiments are run and the scientists themselves are surprised that it worked, because they didn't even think it would work. And to really understand everything is definitely not feasible. You really have to understand just enough to then take that science, commercialize the product, and release it and get people, healthy again, essentially. I think of like even the Wright brothers back in the day, when they were trying to get that airplane up in the air, and no one thought they could do it. No one thought they could get the airplane up, and they didn't understand all the intricate laws of aerodynamics and all these things, but somehow they got it up, and at that point, people knew it was possible. And of course, years later, we have airplanes all over the globe, and I think we're at that point right now where we kind of see the airplane. It just got up in the air, let's say this year, and now all this capital, we're seeing this influx because we know that the airplane's up there, but we need to now deploy thousands or millions of planes, and whatever the analogy would be, but essentially accelerate the progress to make this our reality, essentially.
It's interesting, and I love that that actual illustration, because at the time that the Wright brothers were working on a plane, people knew how to put a plane in the air. They just didn't know how to land it without crashing. And and really the invention that they came up with was a rate limiter invention, the 3-axis invention, where you were able to ultimately control the aerodynamics to the point where you can safely get a plane down. They were actual catapults that were utilized early on, where they will put a plane and then we just shoot it, and the plane will fly. The problem is, by the time it went to the ground, it would be burning, and people would die. So I think from our perspective as a community, we have gotten the point where we can fly. At least the science shows that. From 2005 on, scientists, thanks to, in part to the M Prize, they were able to see that a mouse life could be extended, more than twice its natural years of life. So having that proof in a mouse model kind of gave wings and gave the wind beneath the wings of the community, that power to think that we can now fly. Now we need to land it, and that's really the ultimate thing. There's a lot of people currently up in the air. If you talk to a longevity entrepreneur, that they're literally feeling like that. They're putting together this way to land a plane in a very difficult environment, and some of them are succeeding. They're finding targets that tackle aging in a small molecule approach, and then some of them are also using different technologies like biologics, or even therapies with infusions and different kinds of interventions. So it's exciting to see. There's a lot of traffic in the air. Going with that analogy, let's just see how many can land safely.
That's the real question. So what is yeah, I 100% agree too. And so within Term Bio, what is kind of, I'm trying to remember, I know we talked about this, it's like a skin, something to reverse or slow down the aging of the skin, or
it's interesting. So initially the technology was proven in muscle. So if you look at the Nature Communications paper, it's actually the leg of a mouse was made younger in an injury model. So an old mouse, one leg was old, the other one was reprogrammed to a youthful state, and then the younger version of the leg recovered as a youthful leg, and then 6 months later they re-injured the legs, and that the leg that went through the reprogramming maintained the youthful factors. So it's very exciting because it makes you think about the actual length that a potential intervention can last. If in a mouse you still see rejuvenative effects 6 months later, imagine in a human, right? Wow. So the issue though is you need to, in a way, have a multifactorial equation in your mind answered, because an indication follows markets, follows interest, follows regulatory path, follows a strategy of a cost strategy, right? Because our goal is never to come up with a multi-million-dollar therapy that is going to affect the budgets of the normal human being. that's not the goal we have now. So how do we create interventions that are a little bit that are able to prove the technology, go through the regulatory steps the fastest way possible, warp time in understanding and explaining to the industry how our technology works, and then ultimately creating a product that is not out of the reach of the normal household, right? And skin was just the best strategic and tactical path forward. The mirror itself is going to be a huge advocate for these therapies if we are actually able to help a human being look younger. And as you age, you start seeing the decay, and then you start seeing the pictures and you say, oh my gosh, I can see it in my face every time you wake up. Imagine then starting to see the reversal and starting to see, hear your friends say, hey, what are you doing? You're looking great. So those are things that are going to solidify, like you said, in the zeitgeist, in the current societal structure, that rejuvenation is a thing. So the question at that point is, if you can rejuvenate the largest organ in your body, which is the skin, and you can see it every single day and others can see it, then you start thinking, what else can I rejuvenate beyond my skin? Like I used to eat a burger and I would enjoy it. But now, I'm in my 40s or 50s, and, I regret it the next day because I have a stomach ache, or I can't process it the way I used to. Then you start thinking, well, could I apply this exact same technology to inside of me? And there are different organs that are not as sexy in a way from a marketing perspective that are incredibly important for aging, the thymus and different other systems that we have, the immune system. Nobody thinks, oh, how are my T cells doing today, right? Because because but it's systems that we have that are incredibly I guess created so that we can just go through life without thinking much about it. But these are things that need to be rejuvenated at some point. So yes, skin was and is our lead candidate program. However, we also have a validation program that we're very excited about in immunology, where we can actually make your T cells young, your NK cells young, your NKT cells young, and that has an effect on how you, for example, battle tumors and cancer.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I think that's a good progression. I mean, targeting the skin, targeting the immune system thereafter, and it sounds like there's a good application to muscle, which I think is actually extremely important too, because muscle is the thing that's going to keep you effectively alive. If you can maintain your muscle, you can maintain your momentum, your mobility. You can help to maintain your brain. So I think that's going to be maybe your guys' third target. Who knows?
Well, so we do have a ton of data in muscle. We would love to apply it in different areas. We have to understand that the heart is a muscle, for example, and that's one of the biggest killers, right? Cardiovascular disease. And yeah, we want to apply it into something like that. But beyond that, you have, again, the marketable and the commercial aspects of it. It's the World Cup final is this weekend, and I have enjoyed Messi's career throughout, Lionel Messi's career throughout his entire life, and nothing will give me more pleasure than maybe 10 years from now he takes his term bio therapies and he comes back and plays for another 20 years, and maybe we can get even older players coming back and doing this, and you could do it across different sports. Imagine Michael Jordan playing with LeBron James, playing with the younger generations. I think that will be incredibly fantastic. And beyond that, playing with your grandparents, right? Playing with your parents and enjoying those bits of life that are so memorable, that really ultimately matter the most. I think those are the things that we're very interested in. But we also have a ton of data in the eye. So and we also have a lot of data in in bone and cartilage.
Interesting. Yeah, the eyes, that's another. But I think you bring up a good example. I mean, with sports. I mean, I recently got this book written by Tom Brady, and it's called TB12, and he's the oldest football player in the NFL, and he's 45. Normally, football players, they go into their 30s. By the time they hit 40, they're winding down. I don't know if any others have really made it that far, but
Yeah.
um he has a method, he has a good method. But he obviously has the money and the resources to take any therapies he wants. And he may be first. People like that, they may be first in line too, to they can afford all kinds of things. Um, I think it's a good analogy too, with like spending more time with your grandparents and with your parents, and really not having to see them go through what all of the other generations have. I feel like this is a pivotal moment for our society where we can actually make a difference, and we can actually end the trend of aging and death, essentially.
Right. So I would like to also mention two things. So there's a lot of functional longevity things you could do today. So you can go to a lot more there are a lot more longevity clinics now being built up, and some folks say they've been doing or practicing longevity medicine for a long time. However, the devil is in the details, right? It's unfortunately longevity has been plagued with a lot of messiah of the moment drugs and interventions, or things that are a little unsafe or scientifically lacking that evidence-based rigor that it's absolutely needed. So beyond having wealth and having access to these therapies, you almost have to have a risky mindset where you're okay with experimental projects. Now, I personally believe that a good longevity doctor would not put you in harm's way, right? I'm also associated with a clinic, a longevity clinic that just started in the DC area. But their goal is not necessarily to work on experimental protocols, but to take different things that are already proven safe based on who you are, not based on a national average, and to give access to primary care that cares, primary care that is focused on 5 years from now, 10 years from now, not, oh, let me see you again in a year and see what hurts then and address it. It's how do we make sure that we're preventative, and we spend the time together to make you an optimized person. And I think that historically that has cost a lot of money, and people like like Tom would have access to that. But I think there is a new wave of clinical interventions and practitioners that really care about not being part of a sausage making factory that cares for people, and they're really going to start disrupting the healthcare paradigm while we wait for the next generation therapies like mRNA therapies and the new drugs that are targeting longevity indications. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's a good thing to have folks show interest in this interventions, because it shows people that they should spend their time trying to help society go there. But I think we win if we are able to bring the cost down and transfer those cost savings to the patients.
Right. That's the ideal for sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. Really great. I mean, I think it's different. It's definitely a movement, and we're seeing more and more, in particular, young people coming and being like just interested in longevity. You're seeing these camps, and even in I don't know, elementary school, but grade school, people are starting to pick up. And ever since the big players came in, like Jeff Bezos with Altos Labs, I think that was a pivotal moment. But each of these things are small catalysts, and some of them bigger than others, that are going to bring us to where we want to be. And I really like what you guys are building. And
Thank you.
it's funny you said about the mRNA. I was watching this thing with Elon Musk. He was like, yeah, he's in the Instagram or something. It's like, oh, with with mRNA and DNA, you could basically do anything. You could probably reverse the aging process. And then at the end, he's like, you could just turn a human into a butterfly with these new tools like mRNA and DNA. And what it really tells me is that, the sky is the limit. There's some ceiling that this technology, won't be able to go above, but we're so far from that ceiling, and we have so many innovators that are going to push this forward, that I'm just excited to see what the future is going to bring, even next year.
Yeah, I think so. So, somebody like Elon Musk has been very vocal about not necessarily being interested in longevity or solving the longevity issue. Although I personally think, when you create a robot and you upload yourself to the cloud, you could potentially continue living in that state and that form. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't really know. But I much rather, be living in my meat suit, that we call bodies, and just maximize that as much as possible. But there's a theory and a belief that, we're just programmed to die. But, feeling that there's a death program also brings the up to the fold the thought that if there's a program, there's a programmer. And if there's a program, there are certain sets of processes that are executed. So from that analogy, couldn't we potentially address some of those exec files, right? Those processes
and effectively refactor and redesign our code base, right?
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the question, and there are ethical questions that need to be addressed. I mean, do we want to take the technology to the point where, we give our bodies the instruction to become a human moth or a human butterfly? No, that's not what we want. But eventually, I mean, not at term bio, because that's not what we're focused on. Our focus is how to decrease pain and suffering.
Right.
But at some point in the future, we may live in a society that needs to be careful on how we play around with mRNA. I mean, could we decide, oh, this week I want to be 6'5" because I have a basketball game with my friends, and then we take an injection that makes us that tall because we're gonna go play basketball, and then the next week is like, oh, I want my legs to be thicker because I'm gonna go and do a marathon. So you inject yourself, and now all of a sudden you have more muscle in the legs. I mean, that is a world that could happen, or changing your hair color, changing your eye color, things like that. But as a society, we're going to have certain parameters on how to address those kinds of human augmentations.
Yes.
And that's way above and beyond what longevity wants to do. Human augments versus actually taking care of pain and suffering are two very different things. I wouldn't want to be associated with with the augment group.
Oh no, I could understand that. I mean, I think to some degree, I always see them as a lot of overlap, because anything with longevity, you kind of are still augmenting yourself, but not trying to improve your already healthy physiology to some degree. You're trying to.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. I mean, technically, I'm already an augmented human, right? I mean, these things we call eyes, our second set of eyes, right? So I guess I am a transhumanist because I am, utilizing tools to make my senses sharper but from that perspective, I'm really just leaving it to a yet existent ethical board or committee that draws the line between, are we reversing back into a peak performance state where, Jason, Sergio, you've been there already. All we're doing is bringing you back to that state where you were the best shape of your life and at the best health of your life. And then what's beyond that? What if you're naturally unable to digest milk, right? Dairy products. And then, you start finding different augmentations that are going to make your quality of life better. But beyond that, I think those are questions that cannot or should not be answered by one company or one individual, but rather by a group of people. And there is a full-fledged transhumanist movement that I value a lot. And I've been part of the entire or a couple of meetings and such, which I really value what they're trying to do. At this point, my focus is on something that it's already nearly impossible, which is reversing aging and ameliorating pain and suffering. Once we get there, I feel like my mindset and my bandwidth is going to be enabled to start focusing on something else. So I think we just need to learn to walk before we can run.
No, 100% agree. Yeah. I could understand that. And we're definitely big on the transhumanist movement as well. And we look at a combination, augmenting ourselves to be better. How do we run faster? How do we become healthier? And then how do we reverse the aging process? I know you had another, you got another meet the second, or? Oh,
That's right.
Wrap up. All right. Well, thanks, Sergio. Really appreciate it. Any final last words for the audience?
Thank you for your support. We're trying to do our best, but just know that this is something that's coming. We hope to decrease pain and suffering with new technologies and innovation in the medical and healthcare space. And we hope that we keep maintaining your support throughout the entire process.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you have our support in your mission. So 100% on board. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you again.
Take care. Bye-bye.